This is Linda LaDove with Cuba, Colorado, and this is our virtual spring summit. It's the second installment of our virtual spring summit. This is the Creative Approaches to Community Conservation webinar. Thank you all so much for being here. Oh, I'm on mute. Lovely. Oh, here we go. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. So, and we have all of our presenters. Great. Sorry for that confusion. I'm a little discombobulated all of a sudden. So this is the second of our webinars today. This is the virtual spring summit, and it's our Creative Approaches to Community Conservation webinar. And I appreciate the Land Trust Alliance for being co-presenters with us today. We have Amanda Hill and Wendy Ninteman with us on the line, who will be facilitating today's webinar. We have some great speakers lined up, a series of 4 presentations that we'll get through today. And I won't spend too much time doing the introduction because I'd like Amanda and Wendy to take over the reins for that. But just real quickly before we get started, you're welcome to send questions via the chat function. We're going to let all the presenters have enough time to get through their presentations today, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to send your chat questions that way. And I think that's it. I'll go ahead and turn over the reins to Amanda, if you're ready, Amanda.
Oh, okay, I was muted. Sorry. Gosh. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. It looks like you can hear me now. Yep. Yes, Linda? Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Linda, for setting this up and for inviting Wendy, Ninteman, and I to join you today. We are so glad to be here. We're so excited to be talking about community conservation. It's something that's really important to the Land Trust Alliance, and I think Wendy and I both feel pretty strongly about the impact it can have to land trusts and to the communities you work in. Thank you for joining us. I know it's tough times right now. It's weird to be talking about things that are still ongoing in this time of crisis, but it's really, really nice to see your names here and get to see some of your faces. I just wanted to make a couple observations about this panel and some of the projects we're going to be hearing about today. There's, in some cases, we see land trusts moving to work that is new or different from them, you know, some more community-based. It's very reactive. It's often work that has been requested by the community, and the land trust is stepping up to say, well, if we don't do this, who will? And we recognize that this is often not necessarily an extension of our work, but a deeper dive into the missions that we all hold. And then some of our panelists today are going to be talking about work that is sort of a new angle of our traditional work, which is transactions. And just a couple observations I realized as we were looking at these 4 projects that we have lined up today. So I'm going to turn this over to Wendy Ninteman, who is the Western Division Director for Field Programs for the Land Trust Alliance. I think many of you have had the chance to meet Wendy. She is based in Missoula, Montana. I think Linda mentioned, save your questions for, well, put your questions in the chat box. We will ask questions at the end rather than in between each panelist. And so when you do put your questions in the chat box, you might indicate who it's for, who your question is for, or I might, if it comes at the moment that they're responding, I'll be able to just keep track of that. But if you do have questions and you save them for then, please indicate who you'd like it to go to, or if you would just like it to go to everybody, and we can get a response from all 4 panelists. With that, I thought Wendy could give us a couple of comments about what the Land Trust Alliance is doing with community conservation, and then specifically these 4 groups that are speaking today were invited to a community conservation project that we hosted several years back, and so I'll let Wendy talk about that. Wendy, are you there? Can you hear us? Wendy, you don't look like you're muted on the screen. You might need to unmute on your phone, and you might start your video. I can see your little box. Okay, well, that's okay. If we can't, are you there? Okay, well, okay, looks like we're having some technical trouble there. Linda, you can't hear Wendy, can you?
I cannot, but according to my screen, she does have her video turned on.
Yeah, and she's not muted. Well, maybe we'll just launch into the first presentation, and we can bring Wendy back. I think her comments are universal, but we'll just figure out what's going on with her technical situation, and we can bring her back in a minute. So first, we're going to have Libby talk about a project that Colorado West is working on. Libby,
Great.
are you there? Can you
Yeah,
hear us?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think, Libby, you might need to start your video, and then you can go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, that's why. Okay, good. Here I go. All right, let
Great.
me go ahead
Thanks.
and.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too. Okay. Let me just pull this on up and get it into slideshow format for y'all. Is that coming through? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
we can see it and we can hear you fine.
Good. I apologize. Hold on. I'm just trying to get it into slideshow format, and that is not happening right at the moment. And it seems to be, sorry about this, it seems to be frozen. So if you could hold on one sec, I'm going to stop sharing, go back and try it again. Okay, here we are. Aha. Okay. I apologize. We're going to have to go back to. You think you have it all lined up, and okay, I'm ready. Sorry about that. So thank you, Linda and Amanda and Wendy, for organizing this. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this work. So Colorado West Land Trust recently celebrated with the City of Grand Junction a joint project, a newly completed paved monument trail and the redesign of the Lunch Loop Trailhead. And so we hosted a ribbon cutting, a grand opening. It was in mid-February on a brisk, cold Thursday afternoon. Usually these types of events are sparsely attended, and it turned out that we had over 250 people, community members, funders from all over the state, local businesses, and it turned into an incredible community event. And what we realized is that there was a reason for that. This paved trail that we constructed, it's 1.5 miles long, and it connects the downtown, the Colorado Riverfront Trail, and neighborhoods to the Lunch Loop Trail system. Now, most of you know the Lunch Loop Trail system. It's a single track dirt trail system. It usually attracts mountain bike riders and trail runners and dog walkers. But now with this pavement, we have realized, and we've seen just in the few months that it's been open, a huge diversity of people using this. We're attracting families, people with strollers. I've seen kids on scooters, even folks walking with people in wheelchairs. And what we're realizing is that people, you know, love enjoying being in this wildlands, sort of really beautiful open space that Lunch Loop had to offer, but they needed the paved trail to have that experience. And that's where they feel most comfortable. So what's turned out, particularly as we realized during this time of COVID-19 and all that, this has been a tremendous asset for the community. So I wanted to discuss, what does conservation have to do with this piece of creating a paved trail on a piece of infrastructure, and what was our role in it? We really served as a catalyst, and Amanda just mentioned how we talk about community conservation projects sort of bubbling up from the community. A need appears and we meet that need with a solution that includes conservation. Yet for us, this was a little bit different. When we started this effort 10 years ago, in 2010, the city leadership and the county leadership were not ready to embrace the fact that open space and a paved trail should be a priority. They didn't have the resources. We were in the middle of the recession that had started in 2008. Their eyes were turned elsewhere to attract traditional oil and gas businesses, and open space and outdoor recreation and conservation solutions were not on their radar. So we knew that we had a role to play. During this recession, there were the real estate market was down and property was coming up for sale adjacent to this Lunch Loop area. And rather than having it be snatched up for development, we knew we had to act quickly. And the way we were able to talk the city over this 10-year period into becoming more and more involved in what we were doing was to demonstrate that our vision achieved two important community challenges, and that was community growth and also providing outdoor access close to home that really strengthens and builds our local community. So it's a great benefit community asset. So I just want to go show you a map in 2010 where we're at. You can see the Lunch Loop Trailhead is right here. Downtown Grand Junction is over here. I refer in this presentation to the Monument Corridor, and this is the corridor. At one end of the corridor, you have paved green trails, the Riverfront Trail, the Audubon Trail. At the other end of the corridor, along Monument Road, you have another paved trail called the South Camp Road Paved Trail. You also have Colorado National Monument, a national park entity. And Lunch Loop Trailhead and this area all around it is BLM, 75 miles of single track dirt trail. Also at this time in 2010, you have this area along Monument Road, private undeveloped land. All of this land, mostly vacant at this time, is zoned for high density residential development. So in 2010, when we saw the real estate market begin to decline, we realized that there was opportunity here to purchase land, conserve it, deed it to the city for public open space. And indeed, that opportunity came with the Three Sisters. So this parcel, referred affectionately by the community as the Three Sisters property, and I'll show you why in just a sec, is 130 acres. It was zoned for high density residential development. And when it came for sale, we realized that there is an opportunity now, if we were to purchase up a lot of this open space land along the Monument Road, we might be able to then connect with a paved trail, a solid green line like the others, all the way up here, and we would complete something called the Monument Loop. So our goal and our vision became preserving this open space and finding a way to make this connection happen for the community. Here's the Three Sisters, the Three Hills, and we look at this now and we wonder what it would be like. What would have happened if the Three Sisters were developed? What would we have lost? And this area launched us on the Monument Corridor project, which we continue today. What's happening in our community, as well as in other communities around Colorado, is that you have growing use of trails and open space. Trailheads are congested, trails are becoming more congested. And so with the increased use, we also have increased development pressure, as we do along the Monument Corridor. And unfortunately, we have situations where private property you know, our access to the public trail systems is essentially privatized. People want to ride their bikes and access these trail systems because other areas, the trailheads are congested, but we have private property owners stating that they need to keep out. So what we're trying to do right now and being quite successful with along the Monument Corridor is creating, by purchasing more open space along the Monument Corridor and adding that to the Lunch Loop Trailhead, we're able to expand the access points. But our work isn't done. We're continuing to work with the City of Grand Junction. All through our work, we realized that the City of Grand Junction needed to see real hard numbers as to how this open space and public trail system really contributes to the local economy. And in fact, we had a study done in about 2018, and we realized the Lunch Loop Trailhead is one of 3 trailheads in Mesa County that contributes over 50 million to the local economy. It's really resonated with the city, obviously. We also found out it's the most popular trailhead in Mesa County, particularly among locals, so it's a really strong community asset. And one point that we really like to mention is that, you know, since 2010, we have, the city has invested approximately $1 million, but throughout all of these years, we've been able to leverage those funds. And in 10 years to complete the paved trail and acquire all of that land acquisition that we needed to do that, we have raised an additional almost over 4 million to total 5.2 million in capital projects. And that was a really strong argument with our city leadership. The other opportunity that happened is the GoCo Inspire community. During a time when we were able to demonstrate that access to nature close to home is really important for our community's well-being, our public health, and it, again, was an important message that city and county leadership needed to hear. These kids live in a neighborhood just adjacent to the Lunch Loop public open space, yet they had never been. So they're maybe a mile and a half from this area. They'd never experienced this type of nature just so close to home. So we began to partner with our local organizations through the GoCo Inspire initiative, and we're able to help the Riverside Educational Center establish a, as part of their after-school tutoring program, help them establish a sustainable outdoor program. And then we helped other organizations through the GoCo Inspire Coalition to develop youth bike programs. And again, the message is that the Monument Corridor close to home is the access to nature for many. And that, again, resonated because it's so important for the health of the community. So in 2018, the City of Grand Junction becomes the champion of open space that we have been trying to convince them to become. And we were able to do all of the public land access and the right-of-way and raise the funds to really get shovel ready. So that when the opportunity came for the city to step up, the funds became available through the State Trails Program and through Great Outdoors Colorado Connect initiative. The project was ready and we were able to move forward on it. The great news is that we've completed phase 1, paved trail system, and now we're working on phase 2, trying to make that map greener. And it hopefully we'll be able to do this in less than 10 years. I think for sure we will be able to in the next couple of years. We should have the continuation of this paved trail to the South Camp paved trail system. But the great work that we found was so important for our community was creating this partnership with the city and other local organizations to demonstrate that conservation and outdoor recreation in this case, but certainly conservation and keeping land open for the public was really important for the community and worthy of all of the investment that's gone into it. So we're just excited to celebrate the work we've done so far. So that is my presentation to date, and I'm happy to turn it over to questions.
Thanks, Libby. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, good. It looks like we have Wendy back. Can you hear me, Wendy?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes, I can hear you and I can see you. So we'll go ahead and let you take the floor for a few minutes to talk about Land Trust Alliance's kind of approach to community conservation and your project that's focused on the Intermountain West.
Cool, thanks. And thanks to Kick and all of you for including Amanda and I today. And I actually have to leave the call early because we're having a run through of a webinar I'm doing tomorrow. And now I'm totally psyched out because you couldn't see me or hear me on this call. So I'm not sure what that holds for me tomorrow, but appreciate the chance to take a few minutes with you today to talk about community conservation. Creative approaches to community conservation has to be a worthwhile conversation, something I care deeply about. So I want to talk just for a minute about the Land Trust community's approach to community conservation across the country, how the Land Trust Alliance is dealing with community conservation right now, because just as the world is changing, so is our approach to community conservation, obviously, and never has it been more important than it is right now in the middle of a pandemic. So yes, community conservation is still about expanding the benefits of our work as we reach into a broader audience, a lot like the project you just heard Libby talking about. But there's a million different looks to it, as many of you know, and the one that's right is the one that feels right for your organization. So for some land trusts, it means adding tools to their toolkit that expand their community impact and engagement. So maybe they were just doing conservation easements and now they're considering a community project that has some degree of public access on it. If they've been used to doing projects with public access for a while, now they might be starting to think about access for who. So they might be working with a broader range of partners, and they might be building universal access trails or offering kids programming and getting non-traditional partners onto the land. If they're already deep in that work with non-traditional partners or new partners, then maybe they're starting to ask how their work can help accomplish their partners' goals as well as their own by co-creating projects that leverage their conservation skills to help achieve affordable housing or food security or any number of different things like that. So the Alliance, as I said, our thinking about community conservation is also evolving. Our current strategic plan, which is adopted in 2008, really commits us to the broad strategic approach that we've used for decades to serve our members and partners, and that has to do with capacity building. And I think you're all familiar with that work, and we're really excited about the ACE program in Colorado launching. Advocacy, collaborative leadership, and convening. And at the same time, that plan acknowledges two of the biggest challenges facing the land trust community, those being climate change and then the need to make land conservation relevant to more people. And that, of course, is what community conservation is all about. And just as I said at the beginning, never been as important and relevant as it is today. I was listening in on a pop-up webinar we had just before this. It was on fundraising during COVID-19. And Mark Smiley, consultant from Portland, who many of you probably know, said, we shouldn't be talking about land conservation right now. We should be talking about people and how we can help them get through this incredibly difficult time. So as far as the Alliance and our plans, Rob Aldrich, who many of you knew, was our first director of community conservation. He left a few years ago. Our executive vice president, Wendy Jackson, at the time, assumed Rob's role and initiated the Common Ground initiative, which really is all about asking how land conservation can support healthy and thriving communities. So last year, Common Ground hit the road with a listening and learning tour. And what was really interesting for me about that, yes, they talked to practitioners and they talked to staff, but maybe more importantly, they really reached out beyond the traditional contacts and talked to individuals and organizations who are new to land conservation, may not know anything about land conservation. So while all that was happening at the national level, in 2016, the Alliance Western program convened a group of Intermountain West Land Trust executive directors at the Bee-Bar Ranch, just outside of Yellowstone Park in Montana, to do some really deep reflecting about community conservation and what it means to them individually and to their organizations. So we provided some training, some food for thought, and then really the participants exchanging ideas and strategies was the secret sauce. And it was pretty cool to see what they did and put those new strategies into action. We reconvened the same group 2 years later, so that was the summer of 2018, and it was incredible how their thinking on community conservation had evolved. We spent most of the week, for one thing, talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, exploring the history of land loss in America, and investigating that connection to our work today, and really started kind of poking at our own privilege, which is not all that comfortable for those of you who went through it. But it was also, it was one of the best weeks I've had in a long time. I learned so much. And what was really cool for some of you on the phone is that, so we had leaders from 5 states, and Colorado had 7 participants out of 20. So that's pretty good. And so Rob Bleiberg was there from Colorado West, which was Mesa at the time, Rebecca Jewett from Palmer, Ann Johnstone, and later Noel Durant from Crested Butte. Nancy Butler was there from Wright, Tony Caligari from Colorado Open Lands, John Leibowitz, and later Travis Custer from Montezuma, and Suzanne Stevens from Aspen Valley. So I think when we're talking about community conservation, it's fair to say that the Colorado Land Trust community really is ahead of the game, not just from a regional perspective, but from a national perspective. And I hope you're all pretty proud of that. I think what land trusts are doing right now to connect people to the benefits of the land, it literally can be a lifesaver. So I want to thank you all for your really good work and for including me today. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of your inspiring stories.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks so much for joining us. We had one question come up while you were speaking, and I think this was in reference to the Alliance's strategic plan. Just repeat the key concepts of the strategic plan.
Yeah,
advocacy and...
Right. It wasn't so much the key concepts. It was kind of our strategic direction and our strategic approach. Capacity building was the first, and then advocacy, collaborative leadership, and convening.
Got it. Thank you. All right. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now we'll go back to our schedule. Next on our list is Noel Durant from Crested Butte Land Trust. Like Wendy just mentioned, Noel joined us for the second portion of our retreat in Montana, which was, I guess, pretty early on in your leadership at Crested Butte. Oh, I'm not sure we can hear you, Noel.
Yep, that was within 1 year of me joining the Crested Butte Land Trust team. So, yeah, it was really exciting to get to dive into some of those, the deeper underlying challenges with community-driven conservation, and especially in a place like Crested Butte. All right, well, I'll go ahead and jump in. So our project is one of those, and our organization is one that, when Wendy described an organization that's been focusing on public access and the multiple layers of providing connection to land, we've been, in our 29-year history, really focused on connecting our population, our visitors, to the the lands that lie right outside of town. So this photo I'm showing right now is the Slate River Valley, and the buildings in the foreground are the town of Crested Butte. And since inception in 1991, we've been focused on how we can protect those critical elements that make Crested Butte and the Gunnison Valley special: our scenic vistas, our recreation access, our wildlife habitat, and our ranching. And this town, Crested Butte, was a coal town until the 1950s. So it was bound by company land that was sold in the late 80s. And before it was sold, it was really the backyard playground of the Crested Butte community. And when those lands were sold, the scenic vistas that you see in the background were cut off from the town. And so providing public access and providing perpetual protections for that was really one of the driving factors that created our work, and really has led forward into our current project that we just completed in February 2020, which is the Long Lake Land Exchange. And why Long Lake matters, and I'll move over to our, we have a story map here that talks about the importance of Long Lake. Long Lake matters because it's a really ecologically significant spot. It's significant from a natural history of Crested Butte. This is the lake here that you see. It sits on top of a ridge that divides two glacial valleys. It was created in the Pleistocene by three glaciers interacting with one another and then receding, leaving Long Lake as it sits here. There's not a river that feeds into it. There's not a lot of springs that feed this. This is really fed by natural snowmelt. And it's a really interesting place from a land use perspective as well. And I'll show you this next map that we have. That actually talks about the underlying geology, if you want to get into the specifics of how these glaciers interacted, what's the result of that. But the property in question on Long Lake that we protected is this green outline here. It's 120 acres of Gunnison National Forest, and it's an island of public land that was surrounded by private property. The other half of the lake, shown here in purple, this parcel is owned by a fourth-generation family ranching operation. That has been generously providing public access to this lake resource for the public for decades now. This lake sits within 2 miles as a crow flies from the town of Crested Butte. It's one of the most popular summer recreation destinations for folks looking to get out to swim or take their kids fishing. But because this is an island of public land, access was somewhat tenuous to this. And in the early 2000s, the United States Forest Service was actually evaluating its lands portfolio and looking at ways that it could divest itself of parcels very similar to Long Lake, islands of small, awkward-sized pieces of public land. So they actually proposed auctioning this property off to support the Secure Rural Schools Act. The Crested Butte community rose up and said, no, this property is incredibly important to us. And so that proposal died at the time. But then fast forward to the late 2016, 2017, the public land divestments issue came back up. And the Crested Butte Land Trust, seeing that we have protected over 1,000 acres in the Slate River Valley and actually have a conservation easement that abuts this portion of the property, said, Long Lake is of incredible community importance. We've heard it from our community in the past. What can we do to ensure that it can be protected forever? So we actually entered into negotiations with the Gunnison National Forest for a land exchange to bring to the table like valued private properties that were the opposite of Long Lake, and that they were in holdings within the Gunnison National Forest. I'll come back to those slides here in a second. So this map that we have here, and let me, for some reason, I have a little bit of technical difficulties with the story map page here. It's not really wanting to load. I'll go to the next slide here. This actually is a better photo that shows all the parcels in the exchange. So the land trust owns a small parcel that's 15 acres that sits up on an alpine lake called Copley Lake, just northwest of the town of Crested Butte. That property is a popular destination for recreators in the summer as well. And the Forest Service really wanted to protect the natural character of Copley Lake by taking ownership of that in holding. But the challenge was that the property is small, it's not incredibly valuable, in comparison to this 120-acre parcel on Long Lake. So we had to find another parcel that had significant value from a monetary perspective to bring to the table. And so we actually partnered with the Trust for Public Land, who owned a 600+ acre inholding here that sits northeast of Gunnison. And that drove the bulk of the value of the exchange. But the problem for us was we had to raise $2.9 million to purchase it from the Trust for Public Land. The reason they couldn't just give it away is that the original donors of this property were two longtime locals, Judy and Butch Clark, who lived in Gunnison, who donated this property to the Trust for Public Land for the expressed intent to see it conserved and also generate money for affordable housing. And so this presented the land trust with a really interesting challenge in that we had an already complicated project with multiple parcels going between the United States and private land trust, and this funding mechanism for affordable housing. But what it created was a really amazing opportunity for the Crested Butte Land Trust, which has been a traditional land conservation organization, to broaden our tent, to bring in community development and affordable housing advocates into our work. And so we actually were able to partner really closely with the Valley Housing Fund, formerly known as the Gunnison Valley Housing Foundation, who were the beneficiaries of the money we would be generating through the purchase of that inholding. So with this project, we were able to really start looking at what are the underlying community needs that are present here. Obviously, we knew that recreational access to our open space was incredibly important, but we were also hearing very pointed critiques around the role of open space conservation in making this place unaffordable for more people to live here. And so with this project, we were able to really distill down the role of the land trust to protect areas of highest conservation value. Areas like Long Lake, to be honest, are not a place where you would see an affordable housing development be put in. It would be more 35-acre ranchettes, million-dollar home sites, multi-million-dollar homes, instead of being a place that could be developed for folks that are working in the school, working on our restaurants, working at nonprofits, honestly. So it was a way for us to really distill the work of the land trust and say, hey, we're here to protect areas of high conservation value. That doesn't mean every parcel. And through the Long Lake Exchange, we were able to say to our partners at the Valley Housing Fund, at the Regional Housing Authority, hey, as we start looking at the next step, after we're successful with this campaign, how can we better partner with our affordable housing advocates and community development professionals to look at the interplay between open space and affordable housing. And so I want to dive back in here to the story map to talk a little bit more about another key component of this project when we talk about community-driven conservation, and that is, how do we move forward with our work with Long Lake in particular? How do we build relationships with our neighbors who don't know us? And how do we build trust in a community that is really fractured through increasing recreation pressure? So I'm going to go back up here to look at the multiple conservation values of Long Lake. And this is a photo that was taken from a community site visit that we held as we were launching this campaign. We had elected officials attend, we had members from the Valley Housing Fund and neighbors attend this project. And what we heard from this recreation access side was not just Long Lake is important to protect, but that Long Lake is being loved to death. And we were hearing that from our adjoining landowners, in the ranching partners, our adjoining neighbors that have homes that are in the general vicinity. So we realized that it wasn't just enough for us to say we had protected open space, but we really had to dive into how do we make sure that this access is sustainable and that we are building trust instead of creating more challenges down the road. And in addition to this recreation access that you're seeing here, this is the north side of the lake. There's a series of goat paths that traverse this corridor. Most of them are unsustainable. So the Land Trust really is looking at how can we provide high quality recreational access while protecting the other conservation values present. And there is actually some very significant wildlife habitat on portions of this property that aren't regularly visited by the public. So we wanted to make sure that we could protect these high valued areas from the recreation pressure that we're seeing. And also this area is really critically important for our ranching partners, especially at certain times of the year when the cows have very limited access to water to this portion of the property. So we've actually gone in to create, I'm zooming through some maps here real quick. So pardon the scrolling here. We've created a really dynamic approach to how we're managing recreation values versus these other areas that are incompatible with recreation use on this property as shown here in this outlined parcel. So that the recreation corridor is very clearly defined. We're working with our neighbors to ensure that we can create good signage, good trailhead access plans, and including in those partners are those partners for inclusive access, our local adaptive sports center, creating a way to get clients on a universally accessible trail to the water's edge is a really important project for us here. And also, as we look at sustainable recreation access, partnering with our adjoining landowners, the Allens, to manage access to their property. And this photo you see here is actually from a community-driven volunteer day where we partnered with the Allens to reroute a trail that was unsustainable on their property. The land trust now holds a revocable license on that to manage access and manage signage so that we can consistently communicate how to recreate on Long Lake responsibly. And we have some major challenges ahead of us. I mean, we have adjoining landowners that are not at all sold on public access to Long Lake because they have dehydrated hikers that are uninformed on the realities of hiking at 9,000 feet end up on their back deck, and it's happening multiple times a week. So we have a lot of work ahead of us as it comes to building trust, but we think that the importance of recreation access, the importance of the intersection between open space conservation and affordable housing is really putting us in a very interesting position as we move forward with our work to be more intentional and really adapt what we have always been pursuing, which is to be community driven, but to really think outside of the box as we look at those opportunities to address community need and build partnerships with those that really may not know much about the function of the organization, but just think that we are antagonistic to their purposes. So that's my presentation on the Long Lake Land Exchange. If you'd like to take a look at this story map, in my 2-pager, I have a link to our maps page. So with that, I'll hand it on over.
Thanks, Noel. I kind of forgot to mention at the beginning, I was supposed to be giving everyone a 2-minute warning, but you and Libby both stayed right on time. So thanks for not making me interrupt. Again, I hope you can all see the chat box. Go ahead and put your questions there, and I'll ask them, I'll organize them and ask them when I've heard from our next 2 presenters. Next up, we have Ed Roberson. He is referring to us from the Palmer Land Trust on the Bessemer Ditch project. Hey, Ed, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Can everybody hear me all right? All good?
Yes, thank you.
All
Yep,
right.
you look good.
Let me pull this thing up. And hopefully I won't break the streak of not talking too much, but I'll do my best.
I'll watch for you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, so I'm Ed Roberson. I'm Conservation Director at Palmer Land Trust. I've been with Palmer coming up on 2 years now. I knew a lot of you guys from my work in the ranch brokerage business before this, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Bessemer Farmland Conservation Project, which is in eastern Pueblo County. Hold on just a second. So this map will give you a good overview of kind of the area that we're talking about. Obviously Colorado Springs up here, and a lot of our work at Palmer is focused in the lower Arkansas Valley from Pueblo all the way out to Rocky Ford and beyond. And this map shows pretty powerfully irrigated farmland and once irrigated farmland throughout this region. And this area right here around Pueblo is the Bessemer Ditch area that I'm going to talk about. But I think to give you some context on kind of what is at stake with this project, it makes sense to talk about Crowley County. And so on this map, you can see irrigated farmland is represented in green, formerly irrigated farmland is represented in yellow. So out here in Crowley County, and I'm sure most of you know about this, in the 1970s and 80s, municipalities from all over the Front Range came in and bought up water from the farmers, and then they piped it out of there. And it's really turned in kind of a case study in the worst case scenario of what can happen with buy and dry. And so this community, you know, obviously this used to all be green. It used to be a vibrant agricultural community, strong economy, strong social fabric. And over the course of a few decades, pretty much all of the irrigated farmland, except for about 5%, was dried up. And it really transformed this community. And, you know, from every aspect you can imagine. And this is a great article if you ever want any background. I won't go too much in detail, but an article is in 5280 about Crowley County and exactly what happened. And you just go to 5280.com/Crowley. And my colleague Matt Heinrich is featured in this. But it's been written about extensively. And this is a photo we have from the area. And, you know, from a environmental perspective, obviously disaster followed the dry up of all that irrigated farmland. When I talk about this picture, I say if you put it in black and white, you would think you're looking at photos from the Dust Bowl from the 1930s. You know, from an economic perspective, again, what used to be this agricultural hub is now one of the poorest counties in the United States, all because they dried up their farmland. So back to the area that we're working on, the Bessemer Ditch, you can see that there's still you know, the vast majority of the land is still under irrigation. And this is the area that grows the famed Pueblo chili, a lot of pumpkins, you know, a lot of vegetables that can go straight from the farm to your table. And it is a economic driver in Pueblo County, and it's been a part of the cultural fabric ever since the town was founded. So in 2009, Pueblo Board of Waterworks, which is now known as Pueblo Water, came in and they bought 28% of the water rights along the Bessemer Ditch. If you can see my cursor, this is the Arkansas River. This black line is the Bessemer Ditch, comes out of Pueblo Reservoir and irrigates all this farmland. They did this, and it was a very innovative and in some ways a defensive move to fight off the first stage of what happened in Crowley County. You know, they came in and they offered above market value to farmers, and there were a lot of farmers who may not have had heirs who would want to farm, may have needed the money in one way or another. And so Pueblo County was able to get together tens of millions of dollars and purchase this water from the farmers. And, you know, when you talk to the business community in Pueblo County, they are very, very proud of their public utility, of their utility, Pueblo Water, as they should be, because they were able to come in and secure this water and basically prevent any other Front Range municipality, Colorado Springs, Aurora, any of those groups from coming in and purchasing it. And so when they purchased it, they leased it back to the farmers for 20 years. So 20-year lease. So through 2029, the area down around around the Bessemer Ditch is going to be business as usual, farming and you know, a strong economy, everything that it has been for generations. And so now that Pueblo owns that water, we're kind of at a crossroads so what's it going to look like going forward? And when you look at Crowley County, it was really not a community-driven approach to dealing with this water resource. It was driven by outsiders. They came in, they bought it, they pumped it out, gone forever. It was a one-sided deal. The municipalities won. They got their water. They were able to expand all their, you know, developments and municipal borders, and it was a huge loss for farmers, for the community of Crowley County. It was environmentally, economically, and socially destructive. And so Pueblo County has looked at this, and they see that there's a better way forward. And that's where our project comes in, is that they secured this water, they secured their water future, but there's a better way than just drying it up without putting any thought into it. And so this coalition of community leaders and community stakeholders has come together, and Palmer Land Trust has been one of those people who's been kind of guiding the process to come up with a win-win-win solution. You know, we want the farmers and we want the agricultural community to win. We want Pueblo, the city of Pueblo and Pueblo County's municipal water supply to win. We don't want to say they don't get the water that they're paying for. And then there's a potential for a conservation win. So this project that we're working on, it conserves land and water, which is Palmer Land Trust mission. And then, you know, kind of the ripple effects beyond that is it ensures local food production in perpetuity, which has been emphasized in the last 7-8 weeks with this pandemic. We've become very quickly realized the importance of local food production. It bolsters the local economy. It protects Pueblo's agricultural heritage. And so when you talk about community, these are just a few of the partners that have been involved in this project from the very beginning. Pueblo County, the Pueblo County farmers are the ones driving it. They're the ones that we are working with on a daily basis to see that this land and this farmland is conserved. But you can see the long list. I won't go through all of it. But kind of the top half are the local on the ground groups that have played a big role in this project. And then we've got everything from Colorado-based foundations. Gates Family Foundation has been a huge supporter of this project, and national foundations. And we've recently started having conversations with private equity funds and impact investment funds. And so, the project officially started in 2015, and it's been a long process working with on the ground farmers, the Rocky Mountain Farmers Union. And so basically there have been a lot of different areas that we've explored, but this map was the result of a lot of research, a lot of hard work to basically come up and figure out what is the most productive farmland in this region. And if you had to rank it, what's the best, and then what is not as productive. And so you can see that all these green pieces are the most productive farmland. Then there's some all the way down to red, which is the least productive. And so these areas here that are outlined in black, those are the parcels that sold their water. And so if you look at, if they were to dry it up as it is right now, they'd be drying up not only 28% of the land, but the most productive land. So working with Pueblo Board of Waterworks, who purchased it, and working with all local state owners, county commissioners who've been funders of this project, we have come up with a solution that will allow exchanges of water between parcels. And we just had a victory in Colorado Water Court in late 2019, December 2019. We worked with Pueblo Board of Waterworks to include a provision in that their water court change case. It was changing this water from agricultural to municipal. And this one paragraph that was very, very expensive and took well over a year of work allows us to take water from parcels that still own their water. So for example, this red parcel here I'm pointing at, and then move that water to a parcel that has sold their water. And so then once that is done, we will put a conservation easement on the property. And you do that enough times and you do it at scale, which is where some of these private equity firms come in. And that allows us to conserve a critical mass of the best irrigated farmland. And again, this is collaborative with Pueblo Board of Waterworks, who bought it. They don't want to see economic or environmental wreckage because of this purchase. They know there's a better way. And so the fact that we can get in here and collaborate, and it really is a win-win, it's very innovative. So basically that provision that we got put in the water course change case allows for voluntary market-based water exchanges. It will allow us to keep the most productive land in production forever, and then strategically dry up the less productive land. And there are some environmental water quality benefits to drying up certain land. From our point at Palmer Land Trust, we'll hold conservation easements on irrigated farmland, and then we'll help lead the revegetation of any of the dried up land to make sure that that's done properly. It maintains agriculture as an economic driver of Pueblo County. And one of the things that's been very attractive to funders about this is that it's replicable in other water-starved regions of the West. This idea of getting a provision in the law that allows us to switch the water from one parcel to another is of great interest to a lot of groups. So again, it's a win-win-win. The farmers win, Pueblo County wins, and from a conservation standpoint, Palmer Land Trust and our partners win. And so it's a very exciting project, very complex, and I'm more than happy to answer questions here or talk to any of you offline. So just don't hesitate to email me, ed@palmerlandtrust.com or .org.
Ed, you were fast. I wasn't even prepped with my video on. Good job. You were right on time. Thank you.
11 minutes, 40 seconds. But who's counting? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ed. I love that project. Next up, we have Travis Custer and Marissa Moore from Montezuma Land Conservancy. Thanks so much for joining us. Travis, is Marissa here today?
She is, yeah. Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, great. I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Great. Thanks so much for both of you for joining and talking about your project and your experience, Marissa.
Absolutely. I appreciate everyone having us here. Our project, I think, looks at some of those details that both Wendy and Amanda have touched on, how community conservation can really change our paradigm as a land trust in the conservation community, and really, work to change lives in the process. Our organization is a small land trust in Southwest Colorado, started in 1998. We hold about 46,000 acres in conservation easements. And we also lead one of the Inspire coalitions here in Colorado, and the only one that's led by a land trust. And so we're a pretty unique situation. In 2016, we acquired a 83-acre irrigated farm north of Cortez called Fozzie's Farm. And it was really designed to create a unique opportunity to dive into community conservation. It's a place where participants learn not only about land conservation, but agriculture, ecology, and probably most importantly, I think, about themselves as human beings and the community. Our journey really started in 2018. We dove into the construction of a building, which was an effort led by our education coordinator, who wears many hats in the organization. The building was really designed to be a classroom for the farm with an upstairs living quarters for staff. And really this marked the change of our paradigm as an organization around how we look at conservation and our philosophy for Fozzie's Farm. First and foremost, it's a place for experiential education for people to get their hands dirty and connect with the land. It's also a place where we believe we can expand our role as a land trust within the community and hopefully help to move the needle forward on a statewide and national level as well. And it's also a place that's intended to act as an intersection of the human and the natural world. Programming really continued to develop through 2017, 18. And out of those developments in the program, we developed a pretty unique relationship with Southwest Open School, which is an alternative high school in Cortez that serves students that, for one reason or another, public school just wasn't quite the right fit. And since 2017, we've had about 1,200 youth, K through 12 in Montezuma County, go through Fozzie's, and about 150 adults. But I think the most meaningful experience of these programs has been this opportunity with Southwest Open School, which is what we'll focus on today. We really dove in with the school, much like Fozzie's. SWOS is a place of experiential education. It's a place for students to connect to themselves, to one another. It creates a high emphasis on skills building, life skills, conflict resolution, social emotional intelligence, work ethic, leadership, and responsibility and accountability. And we've learned so much from these students over the years here. And I think the biggest thing that we've learned is that our work is, not just about land. It's also about people. As that relationship with SWOS continued to grow, we saw the opportunity to create some deeper programs. So we started a summer ag immersion program, we call it. It's a 4-week program where students come to the farm and participate in a variety of activities, including on-farm work, service learning, and field trips around the region, visiting other farms, and just a lot of time together, one another, working hot, long days. And that's been an amazing program. Students also receive a stipend as part of this program, weekly stipend, and they also receive credits towards high school. So it's been a really powerful way to use land as a canvas, get youth outdoors, and also help promote their education in school. So today we have with us Marissa Moore. In 2019, we decided to take the summer program a step further and launch a deeper internship at the Conservancy. So Marissa's been our high school intern since January of 19. And I'll turn it over to her right now just to talk about her experience and just what that has brought to her and some of her peers' lives.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Moore. I've been an intern at Municipal Land Conservancy for over a year now. The way I got involved with MLC was through the summer program that Travis just talked about. Joining the summer program was one of the most life-changing choices that I've ever made. I didn't expect for anything to come from it besides gaining credit and doing something over the summer. And also the stipend like really helped my situation out at the time. And before I went to Southwest Open School, I didn't even think that I would graduate from high school. And before joining the agriculture immersion program, I didn't even think of agriculture as a possible career pathway. I never had a job experience before the summer program. And since I took the chance on the program, thanks to the first year director, I had something to put on my resume. The program helped me come more out of my shell than I was, because I used to have like social anxiety, and Southwest Open School like helped me open that up a little bit. And then just dealing with everyone over the summer brought me more out of my shell. It helped with income as well for my family. My mom was the only person, she is the only person that I have besides my younger siblings. I've been the only person who has been able to work due to some injury she's had. There was never a time that I felt like I didn't want to go to the summer program, and it was always fun to see everyone, and it was really accepting. Since my first year in the program, I got to express my interest in agriculture and even became an intern in January of 2019. I helped with the 2019 agriculture immersion program and even went to North Carolina for the LTA rally. We went there and we got to meet so many cool people. I helped with a workshop that MLC did. When we went there, I got to meet cool people. That by itself was one of the coolest experiences that I've had in my life, because I've never really been outside of like Colorado or Oklahoma. This opportunity has given me so much hope for my future and will help a lot when I go to college. I hope to get a degree in wildlife and conservation, and I have so many like open doors now, and I hope to get I have to give a lot of credit to MLC. Like, I'm reading off on my laptop and it's kind of far away. This opportunity has like just done so much to me, and all my peers at SWOs too that have went through this. There are so many amazing stories from the summer program students. First of all, Sean Dean is one of my friends that I made last year in the program. She thought the summer program would just be a good place to hang out with friends over the summer. But it turns out that she found herself being sober and thinking more about her future. Social services saw this change and gave her her baby girl Leia back. Not only did the summer program help her with her money situation, but it gave her a job experience, and now she's working in town because of that job experience that she got last year. She's such a strong person who loves and cares for her baby. And now she's one of the students who went to SWOs and will get an internship through MLC as well. Cole is also someone who was in the summer program, but he was a first-year student, just like I was. And he had struggled and still continues to push through and make something great out of himself. He's had problems with school living situations and still ended up at the first year of the summer program, where I seen him thriving. He says he loves the program so much, and it helped him realize that it's part of his future dreams. So he plans on having a farm. So that's pretty cool. There are like so many students from the program that have told me so many crazy things and how much it's helped them become like a better person just out of like 4 weeks. And I'm 100% sure this program will continue to give so many people a different outlook on life, especially for the new interns. And I'm very thankful to be a part of MLC and to inspire my peers.
Thank you, Marissa. I think Marissa just does a great job of expressing some of those challenges that are being addressed by other members within our community. We also look to address impacts of climate change at Fozzie's Farm through regenerative agricultural practices. So that's been a unique opportunity for youth to engage in hands-on chances to address climate change through their work. I think it's opened up a lot of eyes. And, you know, I think the biggest outcomes we've had have been the changes in our organization and in ourselves. There's increased passion for agriculture, conservation, personal growth, increased success in school for a lot of the students. We've learned as an organization to listen better to our community, to listen to youth, to let youth help drive the design of our programs. And I think that we've really understood the power of land becoming a canvas by which we do this work. Most of this impact doesn't occur in the form of acreage, it occurs in the form of lives that are being changed on land. And I think that creates one of the deepest connections to place that we can hope to accomplish in the conservation world. We've also learned the importance of the right types of training for our staff. We've expanded into things like positive youth development and social emotional intelligence and diversity and equity and inclusion. So really trying to bring to the forefront of our time as an organization skill sets that allow us to do this work better. So I really appreciate Land Trust Alliance and Keep It Colorado putting this together and continuing to support this work across the country. I think it's the future of conservation. We have to figure out how to bring humans back to the land in our communities, and I really look forward to more of these programs and future discourse. So thank you everyone for taking the time today to join us.
Thank you so much, Travis and Marissa. I think it's really uplifting to finish our panelists with your story, Marissa, and Travis with your thoughts. I think you summarized it really well, and that, you know, bringing people back to land is what our work is coming back to, and a lot of you are doing that really well in so many different ways. Part of the goal in this panel was to spark ideas in all of you who joined us about what you may do differently in engaging your communities, or might start engaging your communities more. And some of you are likely already doing community engagement work that you just don't call community conservation, because it's that's kind of a, I don't know, the new term to me, even though a lot of this is work that so many of us have done for so long. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of ideas from places across the country, just a couple other projects that we've seen to maybe spark ideas of how your organization might be more engaged with your community. So many of us, you know, it's really hard to define community conservation because it all is about your community. It's very different wherever you are. So these are just a couple more ideas. We saw one land trust that accepted a donation of a piece of property that was next to a school, and they developed it into a community garden where students are growing food for their own lunches. The vegetables and fruits are ending up in their own schoolroom. So it's not a typical conservation value project. It's small, wouldn't be a typical or traditional conservation easement property, but it has clear benefit to the community, and it's brought the land trust a whole different sort of engagement with their community and just new ability to connect. We saw one land trust that collaborated with the Hispanic community in their region to better understand the barriers to trail usage. And then they developed wayfinding and trail signage in Spanish, along with their English wayfinding and trail signage to be more inclusive of their entire community. We've seen land trusts seek community guidance on strategic conservation plans or strategic planning in general that incorporates the whole community, not just donors and members, you know, not the people who are already on your your list, on your mailing list, but going beyond that, and even maybe getting some support to recognize which pieces of the community you might not be touching yet, or having reached that you might not even be, you think you're reaching the whole community, but you don't know what you don't know, right? So that's resulting in whole new collaborations that might work in health, housing, transit sectors, all new ways of doing this work. So now we'd be happy to open it to questions. I'm going to go to the chat box, and feel free to put your questions there, and I will ask them of our panelists. And I have a couple of questions too that I might bring around if you all don't chime in. So you'd probably rather chime in and hear my boring questions. We have one question here for Travis. What are the funding sources for the school and farm? And how do you engage the community in that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of the work has been funded through, some of our traditional funders in the land trust community, Gates Family Foundation and Great Outdoors Colorado, and Land Trust Alliance being, among a few that most people probably know. We also received some funding through the Betcher Foundation for the construction project. It has been a challenge in the sense that there's a lot of money out there for things like education and public health. A lot of those funders don't necessarily work with environmental organizations, and so we have run into this issue where traditional environmental funders don't want to fund the education or the public health piece, and then likewise, traditional education or public health funders take pause that were from a land trust. So it's been an interesting process, but I think fortunately we have some funders at the table, like the few that I mentioned, that are willing to help push that boundary a little bit, which helps change the conversation in the funding world. We have seen new major donors come into the scene that were, not members of ours prior. They're not necessarily interested in the land conservation piece as much, but they are interested in the human component, the youth internship component. The pilot for Marissa's position was almost entirely funded by a single donor who just has a passion for non-traditional education. So I really believe that these types of programs are important for land trust because they also create diversity for our funding streams as well, and allow us to engage a larger portion of the population in our communities with something relevant to them.
Thanks, Travis. That speaks to one of the questions I'd kind of preloaded, so I appreciate that. We have another question in the chat box for Ed. Ed and Palmer, do you approach landowners of the less productive parcels about transferring their water rights? How is this mechanism promoted within the community?
Yeah, and that's a great question. There are kind of two things that come to mind. One is, when we're given these presentations, we really tailor it to who we're talking to. And all my years selling land, I think it would be a big mistake to go forward to talking with a farmer or rancher and start telling them that their land is not productive. That would end the conversation pretty quickly. And so it's, when you're looking at that map, it's worth noting that all that land is extremely productive and it's extremely great farmland. And so how you word that when you're talking to potential landowners is very important. That we've kind of gone through several different scenarios of how these transfers would take place. And for example, there's an option of Palmer Land Trust, or a group of investors could buy a piece that has sold their water and then buy a piece that still owns the water and do the transfer ourselves. There's also an option of working with a land, like we're actually working with a landowner right now who's got a kind of middle of the ground as far as productivity goes piece of land, and it's a landowner that we've worked with in the past. And then there's a possibility of a piece coming up for sale that sold off the water, and it's more productive. And so this landowner wants to buy that piece and then transfer the water from his piece to the new piece. And so then he would end up having, a better piece of land with water on it forever. And it's also worth noting that when we got that provision included in the change case in December, that was the green light to go. And so our goal right now is a pilot project, and we've have funding from several different foundations to do a pilot project to really prove the concept on this. You know, it works in theory, but we need to figure out exactly how much it costs, work out any kinks before it can be done at scale. And so a lot of it will be just regular old-fashioned real estate work of talking with landowners and trying to figure out a way to work this framework so that they win. Because at the end of the day, it's all about this community, and it's all about helping these farmers. I hope that answered your question.
Thanks, Ed. I have a question that I might let each of our presenters speak to if you have anything to add. I'm wondering if you have seen a change in your number of members or donations that you feel you can attribute to these projects, or your you know, kind of these non-traditional or just new ways of doing work. Have you been able to track that? Are you trying to track that? Or are you making some assumptions about any boosts that you may have seen? Maybe, Libby, if you're still out there, maybe I'll start with you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really good question. Definitely our work along the Monument Corridor has allowed us to reach a number of different audiences for potential support. And so, you know, when we started the Monument Corridor work, it was about creating trail access for a number of different people. Prior to this, we were an agricultural land trust. We were doing conservation easements on farm and ranch land, and, you know, really successfully so, but that limited what our donor base was. So when we started working in the City of Grand Junction, and we started to demonstrate that outdoor recreation had amazing impacts for a lot of different audiences. We're reaching public health donors, we're reaching economic development donors, we're reaching educational donors, and we're able to expand our programming too, where we weren't just acquiring the land or doing the transactions to get the right of way, but we engaged in a lot of different programming to get people of all ages out doing like restoration projects, learning about native vegetation, trail building with the local trail builders. So, you know, really the overall impact of this work along the Monument Corridor has been able to make us sort of part of this community fabric. And what's really cool now is that we're, you know, when the question about trails or a question about connectivity or a piece of land, we get calls all the time. And the Land Trust is a go-to kind of organization that's working in sync with the city, the county, the BLM, and the trail groups and the public. We do have a graph at one point, it needs to be updated, that our membership and our average donation size have definitely increased with the work of the Monument Road project, just because it puts us out front, we get in the newspaper, we're on TV, our stories are relevant for the rest of the community.
Thanks, Libby. Yeah, it feels like there's so much opportunity just for expanded exposure. If nothing else, you don't really have to do anything different from what you would do. You just more people hear about it when it has that human component, and it kind of sparks their another interest that, you know, some people are bifurcated in their interests. Do any of our other panelists want to speak? Oh, go ahead, Libby.
I was just going to say, it does speak to as well what Wendy was talking about, is the relevance of conserving land and just touching so many different groups and their needs. Yeah, thanks.
Right. Yeah, good point. Do any of our other, yeah, okay.
I can add one thing to that. You know, we've had great success with foundations, raising money from foundations because of this, through this project. And I think the thing that is appealing is, you know, obviously we're helping this very specific community, but what is more appealing to the foundations is that it can be, you know, there's a thought, a pretty good thought that this can be, some system like this can be replicated in other parts of the West. And so, you know, Gates Family Foundation, as I mentioned, they were one of the first in because they saw how, you know, innovative it is and how the potential for the project. As far as individual donors, you know, I'm not speaking for our fundraising gurus. I'm speaking for myself, but I have purposefully not asked farmers for any donations or money because, again, the way I'm presenting this and the way it is that it's a tool for farmers to help them make their properties and their operations more productive and more profitable. And by doing that, it helps the community. And there's just something in me where I think it may come off as weird if we're down there, you know, telling them all this great stuff we're going to do and then asking them for money. But what we've done instead of that is we've done things for the community. You know, every fall since I've been there, we've had what we call Harvest Supper, where we rent out the Methodist Church in Vineland and just have a dinner for everybody, and they come, and it's in, you know, October when their work is about finished, and we do a brief presentation, and it's very well attended and very fun. And we've become members of the Pueblo Chili Growers Association, and we sponsor their annual dinner, and we go and talk for 5 minutes. And, you know, my whole posture with this project is that we are here to help, and we want to help, and how can we help? And so there's a bit of a gray area there between asking for money. And, you know, the thing is we've had great success with the foundation, so we're in a good position financially. So that allows us just to go in there with kind of a giving attitude. And so it's worked well, and hopefully it'll continue to work well.
That's a good point, Ed. I feel like if you start with a relationship is two ways from the very beginning, it might not be as successful as thinking of more of showing up and providing something that the community didn't have before. So that's a really good way of putting that, you know, those impacts, you know, the land trust will benefit from this project and this relationship. But to start out with, you might need to kind of show up, become a member of the community first, and really, you know, bring what you can to the community. I hadn't thought about it that way before, or put it kind of that lens on it. So thanks. Noel, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, we had a pretty exciting fundraising success that wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was with a new partner. The local ski hill was purchased by Vail Resorts. They came in, didn't know the Crested Butte Land Trust, but really appreciated our drive to provide deeper community access. And so they actually partnered with us and their employee foundation to host a ski chair sale. And half the proceeds went to the employee foundation, half the proceeds went to the Long Lake project. And it was a way we saw a lot of local engagement around that and to rally behind the land trust and the affordable housing component of the project. So it was a great way to bring a lot of people to the table to enable our work. It was really exciting. It generated a lot of community excitement about the land exchange. And we brought in about $40,000 for the project as a component of it.
Cool. I didn't know about that. I love that they embraced the land trust that way. We're getting close to out of time here. Travis, do you want to jump in on that? Or if not, that's fine. And we can just, I was going to ask another question, but I think we're so close to time. I might just make sure that nobody has anything they want to put in the chat box. Give Travis an opportunity and maybe hand it back to Linda.
I don't have much to add, Amanda. I think everybody landed on it pretty well. I will say with some of our programs, we've definitely had some struggle with concern about mission drift and things. And those are components that we've just continued to drive through, knowing that these programs are having an impact. And I think I saw a significant change at one of our member picnics 2 years ago when some of the youth presented. And, you know, as it is with Marissa's story, every time I get choked up. And I think there's a piece here that's really important, which is when people can see themselves and their community in the work, it creates that connection. And so we've had our ups and downs until we've lost major donors, we've gained major donors. But I ultimately believe we probably haven't been this relevant as an organization in 22 years. So.
Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you to each of our panelists. Marissa, especially you for joining us. I feel like it's everyone really appreciates hearing from people who are impacted by our work. I apologize for the mail must be here or something. Linda, if you want to jump back in and close us out. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I hope to see you all in person soon. Well, maybe Linda is not on or muted.
I was
There
talking
she is.
to myself there for a few seconds. I just wanted to thank everybody for presenting today and sharing your stories of your projects on the ground, and to thank everybody else for joining in from the membership. I think it was, for me, it's always hugely beneficial to hear about the work happening on the ground. I get really energized by that, and I hope that everybody else was too. And if this is a format that works for people, we'll do more of these, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We'll be sending out a follow-up survey, as well as links to all the materials, including recordings of the presentations and then some project summaries that the presenters provided ahead of time. So look for links to those, and I think that's it. I appreciate everybody coming out today and hope you're able to enjoy the beautiful weather. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Take care.
Thanks, you too.